We're going into year 7 of Arknights soon, which is just crazy to think about. With our 6th anniversary event coming up now, I thought it'd be fun to look back on the 6 years of Arknights that have passed and talk about which operators have been carrying our accounts. Of course, throughout the years we've gotten a lot of operators, so if you think I missed someone, let me know in the comments. Arknights was released globally on January 16th, 2020, and to give some context on how long ago this was, COVID was first discovered around this time. The game launched with about 70 or so operators, but 3 of them stood out above the rest: Silverash, Fiala, and Saria, who some players called the Big 3. You could maybe throw Exia in there too, but spoiler, I'll be talking more about her near the end of the video. Starting with Silverash though, he was a pretty special operator back then. He had a long range because of his archetype, could block 2, and had a skill 3 that did big AoE damage, making him a pretty versatile operator. Speaking of versatile, while Fiala is a core caster, her S2 turns her into a single target AoE hybrid while reducing enemy res at the same time. She really had little to no competition on launch, but an operator like Saria stood as the best guardian defender and one of the best defensive operators for a pretty long time. Her S2 let her consistently heal allies, and with her second talent, she could help charge their skills. Her S3 was also interesting since it debuffed enemy movement speed, made them take more arch damage, all while healing allies throughout the skill duration. If you had these 3 operators, you could clear any stage in the game without much trouble. But there is one more launch operator I have to mention, and it's the only operator that isn't a 6-star that I'll talk about in this video. Myrtle I'm sure needs no introduction, as she fills probably the most important niche in the game, DP generation. Both her DP cost and her S1's SP cost are low, meaning you can deploy her really early and start generating DP fast. Because of her rarity, it's really easy to get her max potential as well, which just helps reduce her DP cost even further, and of course you can't deploy your broken operators without DP. Half a year later, our first truly meta-defining operator was released. Blaze was the lane holder to have at the time, with high stats, 3 block, and talents that give her an emergency heal and status resistance. Combine that with the fact that she's a Centurion and does AoE damage to ground enemies, she was easily the comfiest lane holder in the game at the time. On September 10th, 2020, Bagpipe was released, and she was basically a guard and a vanguard at the same time. She does a lot of damage with S3 and also generates DP on kills since she's a charger. Also, she gives all your vanguards +6 starting SP just by being in the squad, meaning you can activate Myrtle's skill earlier, for example. That just about wraps up year 1. There were other great operators released this year, but if I talked about everyone, the video would be way too long, so I'll just throw up some honorable mentions. Year 2 begins with the release of Thorns on January 20th, 2021. Although he shares an archetype with Silverash, they're different in the sense that Silverash was great because of his S3's ability to deal a lot of damage fast, while Thorns' S3 lets him deal good damage consistently thanks to it having permanent uptime after the second activation. Just 2 months later though, we had our first operator that was considered by everyone to be a game breaker. Surtur was released on March 25th, 2021 as the first 6-star arts fighter guard, and was really good at killing bosses and just doing a lot of arts damage with her S3. She made such a big impact on the meta that the phrase "just Surtur it" spawned since she trivialized a lot of the harder content at the time. Our next 2 operators came out on the same banner. Skadi the Corrupting Heart and kal'tsit released on October 21st, 2021, and Sculptor was our first 6-star altar and specializes in buffing, with the added ability to indirectly heal allies in her range. Her Seaborn summon also lets her expand her range, making her a pretty versatile support in a game where 6-stars at buff are kinda rare. On the other hand, kal'tsit, a medic, was a great lane holder thanks to Monster. Monster being 3 block and having the ability to deal true damage with kal'tsit's S3 was really strong. And since kal'tsit prioritized healing Monster, she was basically a self-sustaining lane holder, though she does have the drawback of taking up 2 deployment slots. There were plenty of good operators released in year 3, but 2 of them were clearly more impactful than the rest. On January 22nd, 2022, Chen the Holong Day was released and she was absolutely meta-defining. Her ability to deal massive AoE physical damage in a wide range made her a very strong sniper on most stages. Won't be the last time I'll be saying that sentence in this video. But while she got everyone talking about how strong she was, there were also talks about power creep and if altars were good for the game. On July 29th, 2022, we got our 3rd Sway sibling. Ling was the second blue woman to be hyped up as a game-breaking operator this year, as her ability to summon multiple dragons on ground tiles with her S3 let her control multiple lanes at once. You can combine the 2-block smaller dragons to make 4-block Giga Dragons, which also get insane stats when S3 is active. While she could solo a lot of stages in the game, she had the obvious weakness of taking up too many deployment slots, since the big dragons took up 2 each. I only talk about 2 operators this year, but that's mostly because the power level expectation for meta operators is just higher now, and we're about to see that expectation get met in year 4. The year begins with the new limited banner on January 13th, 2023, but it was a standard operator that would catch people's attention. Pozyemka was a great boss killer on release, doing a ton of damage with her S3. She could also summon a typewriter to the field on any ranged tile, and the summon would reduce the defense of enemies it hit. This summon just increases her overall damage and burst potential, while also making it so that she could hit most of the map depending on the stage. Basically, every operator I'll talk about from now on is still considered really strong today, and Moinar, released on March 31st, 2023, is definitely not an exception. While he does nothing when his skill isn't up, his S3 lets him do massive damage in a large area as he swings his sword. The skill does true damage and feels like a stronger version of Silver Ash's S3. The fact that he does nothing without skill can also be useful too. Having 0 block means he won't die to strong melee enemies. Our next 2 operators carry the Executor archetype into meta relevancy. Texas the Omertoza released May 23rd, and Kirin Aryato released September 7th, both do a lot on a short redeployment time. Texas stuns and does arts damage, and Yato does physical damage while being more DP efficient because of her X module. They're both great emergency buttons, and can be good for killing or stalling bosses as well. The last operator to talk about in year 4 is Inez. Released October 24th, 2023, Inez was the first game-changing Vanguard release since Bagpipe in year 1. Her kit is just loaded. She binds enemies on first hit, can hit air, and also has an area that slows and reveals invisible enemies even if she's retreated or defeated. Combine that with great TP generation, Inez is still one of the best operators in the game today, 2 years later. There's a lot of operators to talk about in year 5. We'll start on January 16th with the release of Eofiela the Vite Aska, a medic known for having global range on her S3 and negating elemental injury. Combine that with her wide normal range, she was a comfy medic to use on any stage. Against enemies that deal elemental damage, however, she felt especially broken since you were essentially ignoring a stage mechanic. Continuing the discussion about elemental damage though, Virtuosa was released on April 30th, 2024, and she made elemental damage mainstream. Arturia deals necrosis damage and also makes enemies in her range take more necrosis damage, meaning you could pair her with other necrosis operators. Her S3 also has a massive range and is great for clearing out bigger waves of enemies. Next up is Dagonbreaker, released on June 21st, 2024. She's a Swordmaster guard, but unlike other Swordmasters, her S3 is auto recovery and has a pretty short cooldown. With this skill, she could do quick bursts of physical damage on demand, which made her a really comfy operator to use for most content. Just a month later, Shu was released on July 31st, 2024. Shu is a healing defender, but with much more utility than your average guardian. When she heals, she spawns tiles under the healed operators, which gives them constant healing and sanctuary. These tiles are also able to heal unhealables like Juggernauts, Mushas, and Summons. With her S3, she does a lot of healing in a pretty big range, but also effectively perma-stuns enemies as she teleports them back onto the rice field tiles. A month and a half later, we got Ella on September 19th, 2024, a true limited operator. She was a DPS debuffer hybrid, being able to deal a lot of damage and also having grenades that inflict slow and fragile onto enemies. She also has a perk of being able to be deployed on melee tiles thanks to her module, which made her very versatile and meant that she was viable on basically any stage. We're deep in the first gauntlet now, and less than a month later, on October 10th, 2024, Ascalon was released. Ascalon was a very strong operator on release, but was definitely underhyped because of the next banner, which we'll talk about in a sec. Her talent 1 lets her inflict slow and damage over time onto enemies, and her S2 massively amplifies her damage and the slow effect. Overall, she's a pretty great generalist. 3 weeks after the Ascalon banner, we got the best banner in this game's history. Ushidel and Logos released on Halloween 2024, and both of them were very strong. Beginning with Logos, he's a core caster that does necrosis damage with his module. His S3 expands his range, makes him multi-target, and does a lot of damage. His S1 has unlimited duration and does a lot of damage. Logos just does a lot of damage. On the topic of damage though, Ushidel also does a lot of it. With her S3, she gets 6 ammo and each shot hits a 5x5 area on the map and does massive physical damage to everything in that area. She can also spawn 3 turrets, and these turrets make her unhittable in most situations, and also stun and deal damage to enemies. On release, she was a consensus best operator in the game, and most people thought she deserved to be in a tier of her own. Wrapping up Year 5 and the chain of strong operators releasing basically back-to-back, All Pianist was released on December 12th, 2024. His S3 has a unique mechanic where he chucks an anchor at the enemies and moves to that tile. It does a lot of damage on hit, and buffs his attacks during the duration. You can also deactivate the skill to move him back if you want. Also, as an Abyssal Hunter, you can pair him with Gladia, whose module gives him percentage-based healing and resistance to physical and arts damage. After all that in Year 5, it kind of felt like they wanted to take it chill for a bit, especially after Ushidel. Skipping 5 months ahead to April 24th, 2025, we got Lappa and the Decadenza. As a Mecha Core caster, she has global range with her S3, and that skill also inflicts fear onto enemies. Fear makes them run around uncontrollably, basically acting like a stun. She also has silencing in her kit like the original Lapland. In general though, global range is really satisfying to use, and also extra helpful on some stages where some enemies just sit somewhere unreachable. Skipping 5 months again, our current gauntlet begins. Monster was released on September 16, 2025, and was our first broken medic. Her main strength is roll compression, she has solid buffing, healing, and can also do AoE true damage with her S3. You can also use S2 to run her as a pure support. Overall, a very strong operator with the potential to get even better in the future since she doesn't have a module yet. On October 14, 2025, Exia the New Covenant will be released. Exia, like the original, is a single target damage dealer, but the Ultra version does a ton of damage while also providing some great utility. Her S3 lets her redeploy an ally to the field, which just completely bypasses the game mechanic. While I'll have to test her myself, I've seen some really funny things being done, like double deploying Surtur or Hoshiguma Alter for the double immortality. She's a game-changing operator that I've seen some people rank as the best operator in the entire game. Sometime probably in November, we'll be getting Trigodia or Phantom Altar, our second 6-star Ritualist supporter after Virtuosa. Trigodia is also a game-changing unit. He does AoE nervous impairment damage to enemies, and his stall ability with his S3 is crazy. This skill lets him stall multiple enemies during its duration, and abilities like that are usually very valuable for higher end content where the enemies have inflated stats. That should wrap up Year 6. We're in a pretty exciting time now with all these operators coming up, and the operators about to release in Year 7 look pretty cool too. Blades' Altar looks really fun, Hoshi has some unique mechanics to experiment with, Haruka looks like a comfy support option, and we also have new collab operators coming up as well. For me, Arknights just has the ability to release so many operators that I'm interested in without power creeping and just invalidating previous units, and if that continues to be true, I think this game will survive for a long time. Thanks to my friends for helping me out with this video. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I didn't play until Year 4, so I had them help with the earlier years. Also, this took a while to put together, so maybe subscribe if you enjoyed.
To you.